are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me today is the one and only Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to be back. We're back. We got a couple good games to talk about. The Flyers went 2-1 this week. I'm sorry, 2-0-1, picking up 5 out of 6 points, and they currently sit third in the Metro. I know it's a little bit early to talk standings, but, you know, we're into November now. It's not unreasonable.
It's not too early to talk standings when everybody else wants to talk standings or act like every game is. I see a lot of stuff that acts like this is the NFL, where one game means, you know, there's only 16 left or 15 left or 14. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You're already down to under 20 to go. We're not even 10 in, basically, up until Saturday night.
Right.
So,
we just passed the 10% mark of the season, roughly, for most teams.
Right. I always just try to take 10 out of whatever. Like, I know it's 82 technically, but I always kind of break it down into those 10 game segments. Hey, look, we're an eighth of the way through, a quarter of the way through, 3/8 of the way through. Like,
I think somebody talked about it. It might have been John Tortorella. He says, you know, he broke it up kind of like that. You aim to go 7-3 in every 10 game stretch. So, you know, that's kind of what your goal is.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. For what it's worth, I'm not trying to jump completely away from Flyer stuff right away, but I have liked him on his ESPN coverage. So,
he has been absolutely fantastic.
So I don't know what show exactly that was that he brought that up, because I haven't really seen much this week.
I think it was a while ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But that's an outstanding point, because I totally agree with it. It's you can't get too invested in the fact that what you see this week. It's like everything, you know.
It's a very long season. It's
a long season, but it's what you see last week isn't possibly not what's going to be seen this week. May not be what's seen next week. You really just have to take it, not just each game at a time, but you kind of just need to break it down into those smaller segments just to feel like you're not losing your mind trying to overanalyze a season.
Exactly. Like, there's just when you're in a season, it's so long, and it's every other night, roughly, or every third night, for months and months and months on end. And if you just go in one long stretch, it'll drive you insane.
I mean, well, and think about it. If everybody overreacted the way that people can tend to, then even just look at a couple of weeks that started the season out, like how it, think about the way the Islanders started.
Right. Think about how Vegas has started.
Right. If you overreact it's like you're expecting no turnaround at all. It's just 3 games, and that's what they are. And you know what? That might work in the NFL. 3 games, and that is what you are. But it's not in the NHL.
Vegas might have overreacted a little bit. We'll talk about that later in the show. We'll overreacting to a poor start.
We'll definitely talk about that later in the show, because I have thoughts.
We have things. We have lots of things to say about Jack Eichel. That's going to be a lot of fun. But let's get started with the Flyers. Monday night, the Arizona Coyotes and Shane Gostisbehere came to Philadelphia.
Tuesday night.
Oh, I'm sorry, it was Tuesday night. And
don't worry, I don't remember most of them either.
My days off this past week were messed up, and it just threw everything off.
There are a lot of times where I don't remember what day it is. I know that there's a game on whatever day, so I remember the games. I don't remember the days sometimes. Right.
So Shane Gostisbehere comes back to town, and man, that was not. I feel like the Flyers played a good game. I feel like they got goalied for a lot of 2 periods, and then eventually the wall crumbled in the third. Is that fair to say?
Mostly. I think that they did get outplayed a little bit.
Okay.
At least, you know what? Outplayed. You're saying it the way you're saying it because Arizona's threats were fewer and farther between, I suppose. They were getting shot volume, but they weren't.
There was nothing dangerous. It was all kind of from the outside.
There were a couple, but not like it wasn't a wave of pressure constantly. I think that there were things that were happening, though, that made, especially given the opponent, that made it feel that way. Like, maybe that's why I feel the way that we do, is like, because I got asked about it. I was on the air on Wednesday, and yeah, they got out. I would say they got outplayed for 2 periods, but I think we're doing it by the standards of what Arizona is, not your typical, hey, they got outplayed. Like,
right.
not denying at all that it wasn't a good 40 minutes, and they had to turn it on in the third period. They did kind of. I mean, what's your take? Did they get robbed of a goal in the second period? I mean, it was kicked out from underneath the glove, so I understand where they were coming from. There was also no attempt whatsoever to blow the whistle at that time, and the referee is really far out of position.
Right.
So it doesn't. There's variables that don't make sense, but there's some that do.
So, okay. I think the call should have been made in real time. It should have been whistled down in real time. But you can't go back after and decide that you should have. Right? Once the puck's in the net and there was no whistle and there was no intent to blow the whistle, at that point you have quote unquote missed, blown, whatever you want to say. You've missed that stoppage, but now the puck's in the net. You can't go back and decide that you were going to because you should have.
Right, and that was a really weird loophole to use because, and I quoted it in my takeaways article for the next day, that it was after discussing it with the other officials, it's been determined or it's decided that it's no goal. Right. Now, my thing is that's the reason that I feel like they did it that way is because
so the ref could cover his tracks and not. They could cover their tracks and not put the blame on anybody in particular. We talked about it and we decided that this is correct.
Well, no. But I'm saying they did it that way because of the fact that I believe that's a non-reviewable play. The same way that an intent to blow the whistle is non-reviewable.
Okay.
When you do that, you have to just make a call and say nope. The intent to blow the whistle. Like it is the biggest cop out that they have, but at the same time, that's what happens because they can't go to Toronto and say, well, what's the deal?
Right.
They just can't. It's not reviewable. So that's why your analysis of it to me is right because if whether you should have or not, it's beside the point. Nobody did.
Yep.
And because of that, it doesn't matter whether the intent was there. It doesn't matter if it happened or not. It just is. This is what happened on the ice. The official standing closest to it signal goal.
If the Nashville goal from the 2017 Stanley Cup did not count, then this goal should have counted. You can't have it both ways. I'm still mad about that one.
Yeah, but okay. So the difference with that one is that at least there was an attempt to blow play dead, and I believe like you can hear a whistle in the play, even though like,
that place was so loud.
Yeah, I know, but you can still hear a whistle.
I know. It just.
I'll tell you what. You might really be able to hear a whistle with the way that ESPN's coverage has been, because have you seen how loud the ice mics are?
The ice mics are very loud, and I'm curious how long it's going to stay that way.
Yeah, because there was a really interesting exchange that happened during, I forget what game it was. There was a game it was on the other night, though, that you could hear everything.
Yeah, there's been a couple that are like, oh, this mic is very close to like the bench.
So the person doing play-by-play for said game is actually this. Here's an can't believe it. I didn't think we were going to make this reference today, but let's go for it. It's actually Leah Hextall is Ron Hextall's cousin.
I forgot about her. I forgot she got a job. Yeah.
But so she closed out the little segment. They were going to break, and she just closed out and goes, "Earmuffs, kids, earmuffs."
That's fantastic.
Which is great. I thought that was brilliant because it was.
Yeah,
you could hear so much.
It really has been crazy, and overall, by the way, I have been very happy with the ESPN presentation. The ability to get most games, most nights with ESPN Plus is pretty nice.
It is. If you're really being nitpicky about it, and I don't blame people for what they're being nitpicky about, like everything that I'm seeing that people are kind of like picking at has valid reasoning 1,000%.
Right.
I think it's too difficult to bounce back and forth between games on ESPN Plus. To be honest, like you used to be able to on the NHL app, be able to pull up a little banner at the bottom and click the game you wanted to bounce to, and be able to do that. So I think that should be made a little easier.
Okay, fair.
And
that could be implemented.
There was one other thing I saw that's a constant complaint. Oh, I know what it is. So it's be really set in their ways with the time limit that they have on a game or whatever. So while you have the game, you may be able to get the intermission shows, but you don't get pre and post, which I think some people would like to have.
That's fair.
Things like that. I mean, I don't know. too much else that I've seen that's like really a complaint about it. Because here's the biggest thing for me that's the biggest difference is that I'm not trying to sit there and say that you wish that when your name is ESPN, I think you wish that everything's ironed out the first week that you have it. I get that, but I look at the price and I go, I remember what I was spending to have the NHL TV package, and then I look at what I'm spending for this, which I don't even buy. Like we don't even pay for ESPN Plus on its own.
Oh, you got the bundle.
Yeah, because
Makes sense.
There's a reason for me to use pretty much. I shouldn't say me, but there's a reason for people who in my family, whether it's my wife or whether it's just other family members, to have access and use everything else. Like, there's a reason to use Disney Plus. There's a reason to use Hulu.
All right, what's your go-to Disney Channel original movie? Top of your head.
Oh, good God.
Come on.
I can't even remember the last movie I watched, let alone the last Disney Channel movie I watched.
I'm going to go with The Luck of the Irish.
It's a good one, though. I do remember that one.
Absolutely. Can't forget that one.
Okay, you know what's funny? Like you're making me think about, because they had a ton of, like, really cheesy sports movies.
Yeah.
Like
the twin female basketball players.
That was the first one that just popped into my head. I swear to God. What was that called?
Oh God.
Wasn't it called like Double Vision or something like that?
Something like that. It was some corny pun. And then there was the motocrossed. Remember that one? Yep.
Well, yeah, because that was a major thing, like 2000.
And then there was the one with the girl from Seventh Heaven, the drag racing movie.
Oh, God, yeah.
You remember that one? Yeah.
You know what I remember probably actually now is I remember browsing through the list of movies that was on that platform.
And just nostalgia trip.
Like, just going like, oh, yeah, that one.
Oh, yeah. Smart House.
Oh, that, yeah. Classic.
Right. All right. Back to the Philadelphia Flyers. The guy on the tab on the YouTube channel here probably doesn't even know what the movie Smart House is. Let's talk about
2 when it came out.
Let's talk about Carter Hart for a second. I think it's time, and I'm officially making the proclamation here. I think we put the Carter Hart conversation to bed. Is he okay? I sitting here today, November 7th, Carter Hart is fine. Last year was an anomaly. It's over. He's back.
There's not much for me to argue with. Here's what I'll say, and I don't want to jump. This always ends up happening when we do this, so I don't want to end up jumping several games here, because the other person we really specifically would need to hone in on is going to come up as we get to the end of the week.
Yep.
But I would say that, let's put it this way: Carter Hart has now started 7 of 10 games, and when your record is what it is, I mean, his record actually isn't even as good as what he's been, because I think his record is something like 3-2-2.
Right. He is 3-2-1.
Is he?
Yep.
I thought he was 3-2-2 because he started 7 games. They just played in their 10th.
I don't know. Maybe Fantrax is wrong, but
I'll take a look at it really quick.
Yeah, it's also showing him with a 241 goals against average and a 926 save.
Yeah, 3-2-2, but 241 and 926 is correct.
Okay. Oh, he must have a shootout loss in here. Okay.
Oh, yes.
That's what it is.
First game of the year.
Fantrax is stupid. Okay. But a 241 goals against average and a 926 save.
Right. And it, like, to go off of where everything, like, if we go off of where things started, because the first game was not good. I think we all kind of admitted that first game against Vancouver, there's some rough stuff going on, and certainly there were concerns after that game. And then you go through the rest of his games this season. Okay. It's kind of funny, because I'm not trying to say that he had a point in the Seattle game where he was bad per se, but it happened so early in the game that I'm just going to kind of make it like the first thing I can remember about that game. He made the desperation save on Jordan Eberle
and turned the game around.
And it was like everything snapped back to 2 years ago right there. Like, everything that was dicey about those first couple of games, everything that didn't look good in the season opener, it's like it snapped back in there, and then he finished out that game looking good, and then pretty much gave you, I mean, like, he's lost games this year where, like, I'm looking at it now, like, he's lost games where pretty consistently at this point he's given up 3 goals or right around actually pretty consistently 3 goals.
Right, and he's not getting the goal support in those games.
You're looking at those games and you're going 3 goals against Florida, knowing what they are at this point in the season too.
Yep.
Not bad.
Fair enough.
3 goals, and it wasn't even like I look at that Florida game for example, and I think about how the game-winning goal was scored in that game, the shorthanded goal that Huberdeau scored.
Right.
It's a bank shot after a great save on a breakaway.
Yep.
He's coming in on a shorthanded breakaway, and then
he makes the first save.
He makes the save. Like, you're sitting there going, wait for it. Like, here it comes. He's gonna get. Like, you would think he might give that up, but he doesn't. He does make the save, and it just so happens that nobody else really follows up the play, so it goes behind the net. The puck's there perfectly for Huberdeau to try that quick bank play, and it works.
Yep.
And that's what decides the game
against a team that's currently 9-0-1 or 9-1, something like that.
No, I think they're more than that.
Sitting at the top of the heap.
10-0-1.
10-0-1. I'm sorry. I mean, right?
Sitting at the top of the heap in all of the NHL.
In the NHL, yeah. Who had that on their bingo card?
I'm not surprised that Florida's good. I didn't pick best in the
10-0-1, right?
I didn't pick best in the league good, but
like at least Carolina being right in the same ballpark, 9-0-1, 10-0-1, something like that. Like at least that you're like, okay, they've been really good for a couple of years. That doesn't make that makes a whole lot of sense. Florida missed the playoffs last year, didn't they?
No, they did make it.
Or was it the year before that? I don't know.
Okay, no. I know what you're thinking.
I think they got bounced in the bubble.
They did, but what you're thinking of is that when they made the playoffs 2 seasons ago, they were the 10 in the 7-10 matchup against the Islanders.
Right.
So they were not technically a playoff team as of March 11th.
Right.
And then last year they did make the playoffs, and last year they the issue with that is that they were better last year than anybody remembers because their first round was Tampa.
Right. And Tampa
with Nikita Kucherov coming back right at that moment.
And he went obscene in that series.
Right. So people don't remember how good that team was and realistically, to be honest, how fun that series was because it was one of the most fun series that was on in the early stages of the playoffs.
Did it go 7? 6?
I believe.
6. Okay.
I remember there was an overtime that Florida won that made everybody kind of get all hopped up because it was they're back. It's like it made it like 2-1 in the series, so they had a shot. I thought it was either 6. One of them was 6. I'm trying to remember which one it was, whether it was Florida or Carolina who got it to 6. Maybe it was Carolina who got it to 6. It might have been 5 for Florida then.
You might be right.
But it wasn't as lopsided as that would have.
No, it was a close series. It was 5 close games,
and it was entertaining and it was fun. And
the playoffs were a lot of fun last year
because there was a lot of close. I mean, how close was? We're talking about how that next round was Carolina Tampa, and that ended up going 6, and it kind of got out of hand at the end because Tampa really just kept coming in waves. But you do have. Like the series before, Nashville gave Carolina a run for their money with a bunch of overtime games.
That series was a lot of fun too.
And nobody gave Nashville a shot.
No, nobody. They were tight in that series.
But anyway, so back to Carter Hart because so the Florida game to me was not that big of a deal because you go, okay, look who it is. He gave up 3 to Edmonton. Well, that sounds like a normal night for most goalies. With their offensive firepower. And then he played Calgary and. I even said this on the air this week. I was so disappointed in the Calgary game that he gave up that late goal to Johnny Gaudreau because of the fact that at that given point in time, if you would have just gone out with 3-0, one was an empty netter, and he finishes with what did he end up?
2 goals allowed.
He had 32 saves on 35 shots. If it would have just been 32 on 34, and you lose 3-0,
then he looks fantastic coming out of that, even in a loss.
And it's 2 backdoor style plays that are the goals. So he had nothing he could do on the goals.
He got hung out. He got hung out to dry on him.
And the whole time we knew, right? And the whole time we knew, he's the reason they were even in this game. It's 1-0 at the end of the second period, and for a good chunk of the third, before before they finally take a penalty that leads to a power play goal,
you have a handful of shots,
and you have like 9 shots, and he's the reason you're in the game. Like he was outstanding. And I just hated it for his numbers because I knew what the numbers were going to look like, specifically going into the game we're talking about right now, the Arizona game. Because I'm going, it's going to make the save percentage a little lower. It's going to make the goals against, it's going to tilt it towards 3 because it's technically that was another game with 3 allowed.
But you know how he responded to that game? By shutting out the Coyotes and by looking great again. That's why I want to talk about ending the questions about him, because that's a game that's easy to give up after, right? You carry the team for a large portion of the game. They have 9 shots through 2. Like you're doing all the work. It's real easy to give up on the team after something like that. And instead he comes out and pitches his first shutout of the season.
Well, exactly. And not only that, but it was, from that very first game with the way that it went, you still needed convincing. Like, even after the Seattle game, it was, okay, he gave up 1. It was a really good win. You're going to give the credit where credit's due, but you're sitting here going, we don't really know. It's Seattle's 4th game of their franchise's history. It's the Flyers' 2nd. Don't jump in right away, kind of. Just because he had 1 good game. He also had 1 lousy game. You can split the sample size down the middle. It's now become a trend, especially with 7 starts already, when you consider he's not going to, let's just say, that trend's not going to continue. He's not going to make 70% of the starts this year.
No. No, but we talked about the 10-game segments, and if he started 7 of those, you multiply that by 8, he might start about 56 games. That's a reasonable number.
The reason I don't think it's going to happen that way is because right now they haven't had the back-to-backs pile up, but they will. And
when they do, Martin Jones is going to play at least one of those games.
Usually, yeah. Unless they really try to. I mean, I don't know. You got to go back to that was still Scott Gordon coaching the team on an interim basis when they actually were trying to use Carter Hart as a rookie, and they still leaned. But I think a lot of people do right about now.
He was fun.
I liked him. I did always like him. So you're gonna that'll balance out over time. But this is a 7-game out of 10 sample size now, which, if you can go off of that 70% of the starts to this point, and certainly for a goalie, that's enough. Like, that's enough to kind of start building a sample, because it's not quite for him. It's not a quarter of what he's going to play, because that would be 28
a little
games
light,
total.
Yeah,
that's a little light. But all right, so say 50 is the number. Well, you're getting closer to 20% of that number.
Yeah,
and if you're getting close to that 20% mark, which is what we try to look at a lot when it comes to certain
benchmarks,
portions of where a team is. He's not only given you good results or kept you in just about every game that he's played. Look at who he's playing. Like we just ran down. It's Florida, Edmonton. Who else did I say in there? Calgary was in there. He's played Pittsburgh now, who has been, for not being a dominant team, they've held their ground, which is important for them. I mean, they're just trying to get back to where they have a roster that you really get scared of, kind of. Like, on paper, it's not exactly a scary roster, but that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Look at what they're doing, So, but it's the way he's and then he is giving you, like, I look at the Arizona game the same way maybe I look at the Seattle game a little bit. Like, if you're getting the 1 goal allowed, or here's a shutout against teams like that, and then 3 against everybody else, but the third is like a late goal or something, if you're getting those performances, and it's really, I mean, he's not allowing 3 goals on like 20 shots either. These games are 3 against Florida on 30, 3 against Edmonton on 37, 3 against Calgary on 35, 3 against Pittsburgh on 36. Like,
he's seeing action.
Like, he's seeing a lot of rubber right now and handling it, which is why, forget the fact that he's technically lost 4 games, won 3 out of the 7.
The team has lost those games around him. Let's be real.
His save percentage is .926.
Yep.
That's really good.
It's really good.
Like that's pushing elite levels.
That is above average in the NHL. Yeah.
And do I think that number is going to hold? No, I don't. But I would love to see it hold at the 910 to 915 range and say, look at what you've got the foundation built on. He's given you, like, he's shown that he can give you the shutout.
Yep.
At times. He's also shown that in a game where he is not going to make every single save for one reason or another, and most of the time this year, it's been just immense waves of talent coming at you. I mean, like, and bad bounces and things like that. So for the games he's going to give up 3, he's at least keeping you in most of those games throughout. Right. So you're not in a situation where you feel like, I mean, aside, maybe with the exception of the Calgary game, has there been another game yet this season that you really sit there and go, that for all intents and purposes, by final score alone, maybe the process doesn't look good against this team or whatever, like that didn't feel like a 3-0 shutout win when you consider the process of getting there, the fact that it was still tied, no score, 2 periods
nothing
in.
after 2,
right. So that I get that, but have they had a game where they've been truly blown out, with the exception of the Calgary game at the end?
No.
Which, by the way, the score reflected what the play was for 2 periods anyway, where you're getting no shots. So, okay, you lost the game 4-0. It was awful. It was a terrible game. But have you had that bad of a game at any other point during the first 10?
No, the Flyers only have Flyers only have 4 losses on the season. We talked about the Florida game where you lost to, potentially the best team in the league. You have the Calgary game, which was a dud. The other 2 losses, you lost to Vancouver in your season opener, and the game that we're about to talk about right now, Thursday evening's shootout loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins.
I think it's really funny that you just bridged that gap with that first game, because I feel like you could almost look at the 2, I'll call them extra time losses, one's a shootout, one's overtime, obviously, as like an extra win. Because you really had no reason to get points in either game, and
you didn't deserve the 1 point in either game, to be honest.
But you got 2 out of both of those games, so you kind of added an extra win in a weird way.
And that's the kind of thing that good teams do, and we've talked about that.
Absolutely, and I know that kind of going into this particular game, there was a thought process that look at everything that Pittsburgh doesn't have, and I kind of warned against that throughout, like, just because they don't have Sidney Crosby, just because they don't have Brian Rust, just because they don't have Evgeny Malkin, just because they don't have Brian Dumoulin. Mike Sullivan couldn't even coach the game after as of the day of the game. So
as of 5 o'clock.
Basically.
Yeah.
So you sit there and you go, just because of all of that, it does not mean this is going to be an easy game. It does not mean any. I don't understand why people don't really put this together, because it happens in all of sports. It doesn't really matter which sport you're talking about. When you play within your division, you've got to expect close.
It's going to be tough. Yeah.
Right.
No easy games.
Yeah, we do this with football all the time, because in football, when you get, you could be 1-6, you could be 8-0. It doesn't matter. You're going to play a team within your division. There is an extra energy to it, especially when you don't see them every day, which this is why this was also a big deal, this particular game, because it was lined up to be that way, as in, here's the first chance you have against a Metro team. The Metro has looked so good throughout. I mean, even now, I can't go back specifically to exactly what it was on the NHL app anyway. I can't go back to what it specifically was standings-wise going into Thursday.
Right.
But as we sit here on Sunday talking about it, the lowest point total in the Metro is 11 points.
It's insane. That's actually crazy.
Now, here's the thing. As of Thursday morning, it didn't look this way. And what I mean is that I think there have been more games played over the last Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
It's been a busy couple of days in the Metro.
Right. Well, and around the league, too, because I think teams are catching up is what I mean. Because at one point in time, Pittsburgh had 8 points, was the lowest point total in the division still. And yet they were something like 16th in the league. 15th in the league. They were among the top 16 teams in the league, despite having the worst point total in the Metro division. While you go to the bottom of the list and go Arizona, Chicago, Montreal, Ottawa, these teams that aren't winning games.
That's so funny.
And I mean, I think that at least two of them, maybe more as I go through, but there's a lot of Central teams that are involved in that. The Central looks awful.
Is bad. Yeah, this is going to be one of those years where a team is going to miss the playoffs. The Metro is going to take both wild cards, and a team is going to miss the playoffs, and then some team in the Central is going to make it with 79 points because of the three division spot thing.
I will say it's balancing out a little bit more because at least as of right now, the only like a Metro team would end up. Well, no, they would make the playoffs, so it's not going to matter there. See, you do have to still divide it by conference. That's the thing. Like, if it's going to be one thing if you sit there and you go, hey, somebody in the one conference doesn't make the playoffs, and in the West it's going to be totally different, or vice versa. But at least the three teams at the top of the Central are 15, 14, and 14 points. And at least the three teams at the top of the Pacific are 18, 17, and 13 points. Like, they're not bad numbers.
Right.
I mean, actually,
and it's also early in the season. There's plenty of time for that to turn around.
Sure. There's still a handful of teams as I scroll through that are going into Sunday with only 9 games played this season. I mean,
right.
even the Flyers at 10 are low by league standards because you've got one team in the Metro has played 12, 2 in the Central or 2 in the Atlantic have played 12, and 1 has played 13. To be that far ahead. 2 in the Pacific have played 12, and 2 in the Central have played 12. So already there's 4 points for teams with, up for grabs with teams at 10 games that could create even more separation in the league. And it's funny, a lot of them are the worst teams in the league.
That is true. It's really weird how the season has started.
The teams with 12 or more games so far: Arizona, Chicago, Seattle, and Anaheim, Montreal, Detroit, Toronto, and the Rangers.
Okay.
Now, some of them are good, obviously. Like the Rangers are actually off to a really good start, and they've had a rough weekend.
Yeah.
To say the least, because they were looking at least 2 points on Friday night, and who knows what happens on Saturday if they win, and that quickly turned into 1 and then nothing the next night. So
yeah, things are tough over there.
Which by the way is the difference right now with the Flyers. I mean, well, it's a bigger difference than that because the Flyers still have 2 games extra to play.
Okay.
So there's.
We're already talking about games in hand, huh?
No, I'm just pointing it out because of the fact that, like, the other thing to keep in mind is that through 7 or through 10 games minimum, let's call it that, the only team that has a clear-cut higher points percentage than the Flyers in the division is Carolina at their 9-1-0 record. Columbus is even with them. Columbus is 7-3-0, which is a surprise to start the season, to say the least.
Yeah.
And the Islanders have not yet gotten to 10. I think their 10th game is actually Sunday night. So
okay. They also still haven't played their first home game.
Yeah, but if they win that game on Sunday, then they will have the exact same record as the Flyers through 10.
Okay.
So
yeah,
so it all falls in line, right? Like it could easily, work itself out. I think that's an advantage for the Islanders, by the way. I hear you. They still haven't played a home game.
But now they get to play 40 of their last 60 at home.
Exactly. And that limited travel.
Right. That's going to be crazy.
Why I still believe it's going to be a crime if they don't win the division.
The island is going to be tough.
Well, especially as guys get into a rhythm. Like, it's very clear early on. I mean, like, you see this with the Flyers a little bit, too. There's guys who just haven't gotten off to... Actually, it's a great segue for this game in particular because of the fact that it's the third line thing.
Yep.
You may have opportunities. You're just not getting on the board yet. And it finally did happen in this game. That's how they got it tied late. I mean, it was a rough go, that whole game, kind of, in a way, because as good as...
Starts off bad.
Yeah, that was just a whole literally sleeping off the opening face-off kind of play.
Yep.
But then beyond that, they're sleeping off the face-off. They give up the goal. It took them a long time to get that tying goal again.
Get it back.
The whole first period goes by. They finally get a chance, and they do get the goal back in the second period. And that quickly, I believe it was like within 4 minutes, Pittsburgh comes down and takes the lead again. And again, it's the same thing that held until you got closer and closer to the overtime. Here's the interesting part. And it was a really interesting game when it got to the overtime because, again, just like the game before that we were just talking about against Arizona, where I even, like, we kind of touched on it a little bit. What's your thoughts on the call that a goal gets taken away from you that you think you've scored, it takes a review to determine that was in. And here's the thing, okay, because I saw it coming from both ways, because I think it was in. A lot of people who I saw thought it was in, and yet I also saw that there was like, but that's not conclusive enough. Like, you can't tell, so it shouldn't be a goal.
Yeah, you saw white.
I think
that's usually the indicator.
I think that what they actually really saw more than anything is because I don't think you can tell that there's white between the goal line and the puck.
Okay.
In that still shot, because it moves too quick. Like, it's in and out so quickly. I don't think you can tell. I think what you can tell is the first angle, which really made people think. Like, you heard it on the broadcast. They get really worried at that moment because it disappears behind the post. I don't see it anymore. Well, if I don't see it anymore, I have no choice but to assume it's probably in.
Right.
And I think that's what really happened. I don't think that was, and I said it I tweeted it after the game. You can sit there, yeah. It's disappointing that and I think maybe from Carter Hart's standpoint, it's more disappointing because you played a really good game, you gave them a shot to earn the point, you did steal them the point,
and you let up an annoying goal.
And the reason that you lost is not even anything that's overly your fault, because the initial shot was blocked. So he's out of position because the shot was blocked. He tries to get over. Right. He does technically make a save there, but it just is one of those stay with it, and the thing is rolling along his pad, and it goes in.
It just trickles, yeah.
And it's bare. But see, I don't care. Like, you'd almost rather for a goal that happens in that style, on like that wraparound style play, than just let your pad not even hold up there, and just you didn't make it to your post, so your pad partially gets pushed in as it's going in, but it's not going to change what was going to happen. It was halfway in when you were
getting over there anyway, right?
But the thing at least slides to the back and hits the back of the net as a result because of it. Not it was I don't even know if we can call you can't even classify that as past the post. Yeah. You can't even classify that as an inch past the post.
Yeah, that feels bad.
And across the goal line. Like, you can't even classify it as that much. And that, like, to me, that does really suck for Carter Hart. Like, you had a great game. That's what you lose on. It sucks. But otherwise, I was not overly, like, I didn't feel like it was a frustrating result. I mean, it was frustrating given the whole scope of the game. It wasn't frustrating based on the way that they played. It was kind of almost deserved.
Right.
And so that kind of happens. And I do think that maybe as we start to shift to the next game, that you get to that point, because like I think they took that to heart a little bit when you get to the next game in line and you're going to play another divisional game, and you kind of have to go in real. I mean, let's put it this way. Were the Capitals playing with their full lineup?
Nope.
They're missing guys, but you didn't act like. I mean, and I'm not trying to downplay the fact that the Flyers are missing guys too, and we will get into those two of the only two real specifics we have left to get into. I mean, I'll throw a footnote out when we're talking about both of them, but it's not really as a from an injury standpoint, it's not really a close update, if you will.
No.
You know.
We'll talk about them in just a second.
But you go into this game, and I think you actually embraced what the process of a divisional game has to be. It's got to be a little ugly at times. It's got to be tight.
Real ugly.
But it's going to be tight games, and you have to be prepared for those situations. You have to be prepared, and this is what's going to, truthfully, this is what's going to decide whether or not you make the playoffs this year. I don't care about any of the other games we've seen to this point, kind of in a way.
And remember, if you do make the playoffs, once you get there, you're going to be playing these teams in these kind of games to a higher degree.
And I guess to start it off with, you certainly want to see what you got in Pittsburgh with Carter Hart, because that's going to be your guy.
Yep, absolutely.
Not to take away from what happened in this game because Martin Jones was in goal, but you know it's going to be Carter Hart when it comes playoff time. Of
course.
If you're there and you're playing a team like Washington, like Pittsburgh, like the Islanders, like, you know, you name it.
Murderers row in the Metro. Jeez.
It could be anybody. But
Carolina.
But the thing is that right now you're hanging with everybody. That's the other thing you got to go with, is that you're hanging with everybody.
You deserve your spot. You're one of those teams.
I mean, you got to ask yourself, how do you feel if you're realistically either Pittsburgh or New Jersey, and you're not that far out of it? You're basically you're 2 points, but those 2 points can feel massive when you're looking up at everybody.
There's
too much moving around. Yeah.
One thing the Washington Capitals broadcast was talking about Saturday night, because that's what I was getting on ESPN Plus. They were talking about the average age of the Flyers has gone up. I think it's something like 29.4, and they're one of the older teams in the league.
Yeah, I think they're the fourth oldest in the league.
Right. And all these additions over the summer, and the team's gotten older. This is why. We've talked about it before, right? You're getting this age and this experience for division games and for playoff games. And
well, yeah.
And we saw this against the Capitals on Saturday. We saw a gritty win, and one of the guys who scored the opener, Derek Brassard, huge, older guy they just added over the summer, guy with a lot of experience, a lot of playoff experience.
Yeah, exactly. And they hadn't. That line was not having their best week to that point.
No,
but that's a really good play by them to get on the board finally, and they've scored the first goal 7 times this year, and won all 6 games as a result of it. So when you're past when you're past the halfway point of regulation at this point, and again, now of course it's a different feel than going through most of 2 periods without anything against Arizona.
Right.
This is Washington. You're kind of almost thankful at that time that you're getting the performance from everybody else to sit there and say, well, Alex Ovechkin hasn't done anything yet, and Washington, with all their firepower, hasn't done anything yet.
Right.
So
you've killed 2 penalties by the halfway point of the game.
Yeah.
So Ovi hasn't killed you on the power play yet. You've neutralized that pretty well.
2 really lousy penalties, by the way, because is there any more blatant of a slashing call than you can get on what Lawton did in the first? And then, funny to me how Derek Brassard is the guy who gets the goal after taking a really dumb penalty in his own right there. He
needed the retribution on that one.
But he makes up, he does really make up for it with that, obviously by scoring a goal. So, but it was he's not so far this year. When we talked about that line and the point production. He's like the last guy that comes to mind because of the fact that the goals have been from Joel Farabee and Cam Atkinson. And even down to earlier this week, it didn't end up counting, but we thought that Cam Atkinson had another goal. It would have been 7 on the year in his 8th game of the season at that point.
Is that good?
Right. Now, he's still at 6 through 10, so it's a little different.
It's a little different.
But the thing about this is that they are... Brassard's not the guy who you're going to sit there at this point and think goal scorer or even point getter sometimes. He's not necessarily going to be that guy. He's actually probably more or less let's be real. It's not even really his role.
Right.
He's playing second line center and it's not really his role. And it was interesting to me because as the week went on, we're like I said, we're going to get into some of the injuries in a couple seconds. I was starting to wonder, are they getting to the end of their rope here with what they've been using to replace 2 really important guys?
The Fab line.
But kind of in general is it getting to the end of the point where you can't really go Derek Brassard second line center anymore? Are you getting to the end of your limits with that?
And
are you
for the record, him scoring on Saturday doesn't entirely change that. It is coming to the end of that a little bit, I think.
Right, but see, I wouldn't I still wouldn't.
I'm not hard criticizing it. But
no, and they've had good moments. I'm not trying to sit there and say that they haven't been good. It's they've been fine. It's just the production really dipped off, and when the production was down, you start to notice what they don't bring in certain areas. Right. Also, that's all.
That's fair. But
I just thought Brassard's probably the main focus of it because I don't think you're going to look at Farabee or Atkinson and say a couple of rough games or not scoring is what's going to make you change your mind about them. Farabee has probably actually been, in the grand scheme of things, probably been the guy who's looked worse of the 3 in these last maybe 3-4 games that started to slow down a little bit. He came out and had the same kind of start that Atkinson was having with the production, and his production has dipped off even more than that. He's gone, I think now maybe 5, maybe 6 games without anything.
Right.
After starting off the way that he did.
6 points in 3 games, his first 3 games, right?
That's not to say that he can't turn it around again quickly or that he's not maybe in a spot where he might be able to get something, but I guess he's kind of fitting into that goal scorer mold type where you're gonna get streaky at times and it's gonna happen. And And I think that you're also crazy to not think that every team didn't look and say, which you got to pick which line is the hottest at the moment and defend them. I mean, I think that there's also teams that kind of fess up to it. It's kind of the, and I'm not trying to compare players here. Like, please don't think that me putting them in the same sentence is me saying they're the same type of player. They're not. But it's almost the McDavid, Ovechkin kind of theory with Couturier and Giroux, in the sense that when they really are going, you're just trying to contain. They might still get 1 point, but it becomes just if they
hold them off a multi-point night. Right.
If they don't get more than 1 point, you've done a really good job that night. I mean, especially
you go into damage control.
Well, and especially when your production level is as high as those two players are right now, early in the season. When Drew has gone, I think Drew has not had a point in one game, which was the one that he got shut out in. Like, if they've scored a goal, he's factored into the game.
Yeah, Claude has been very, very, very good.
And Couturier has kind of, well, I think now it's a little less quietly, but in the beginning it was really quietly, was right near the top of the points for them, like in terms of point production. Now he's right there, but it's becoming big goals. And like,
yes, it is.
I mean, he's got 2 game-winning goals this week.
Yep. Travis Konechny's coming.
Well, Travis Konechny, it was set up the one for sure. Did he set up? He didn't set up the second one. No, it was Ristolainen had the shot on the second one.
Oh, you're right.
But that line has been moved. And here's Konechny had a goal on his stick in Saturday's game. It didn't go in, but like obviously it was a good save made. But he looked like he had a potential goal on his stick, and he knew it. He reacted as such.
And threw the head to the ceiling.
And let's put it this way: he did get he scored a really nice goal in Pittsburgh.
He did.
So that kind of gets you kind of going again a little bit. Like, he had scoring chances, and just when I thought that you might want to break up that line a little bit, like you might want to just make a subtle change among your top 6.
Ooh, show me Couturier, Giroux, Farabee. Oof.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I kind of would have expected. My guess would have been that Atkinson would go up, but that's not a bad thought either.
No, I think you bring Farabee up and just let him play with the big boys for a couple days. 'Cause, oof, that would be a lot of fun.
Maybe, but I don't see right now. I don't think they're going to do anything now, because I think they've.
I agree.
First of all, they're 6-2-2.
Right. Well, and the other thing I wanted to mention about Farabee and the production drop off there is, you have to mention. We talked about Derek Brassard, and I really think that when Kevin Hayes comes back, even though Derek Brassard has been solid, when Kevin Hayes comes back, I would expect that line to elevate even a little bit further. Just because Kevin Hayes is a better hockey player than Derek Brassard. Nothing against him, just facts, I saw
this bounced around a little bit, and it's an interesting thought, because I've thought about it myself a couple times. Because Cam Atkinson is about as aggressive as it gets on a penalty kill.
He is.
And I'm not sure what's going to happen when Hayes comes back, if they're going to put him on the same unit as
they're going to start
Cam
getting
Atkinson.
2-on-0s.
I don't know. I wouldn't go that far, but I'm sitting here and it's funny to me when you watch what Cam Atkinson does. And I honestly, when I'm watching him, I think about some of the early Kevin Hayes moments from his first season here. The way that he got shorthanded chances, because it's very similar. It's just reading a play. It's actually really funny, because the first shorthanded goal that he ever had here was off of a steal of a pass from Cam Atkinson.
Was it really?
Yes.
Oh, that's so funny. I believe I was at that game.
But that was who made that pass. Cam Atkinson made that pass that Hayes picked off and took off the other way and scored on.
What I'm looking forward to is Kevin Hayes is enormous. He's got a wingspan. He is just massive on the ice, especially on the penalty kill. He takes up so much space.
He does.
I can't wait for him to just swallow up pucks and hit Cam Atkinson and just yell "go," and Cam just boom, gone like a rocket. I hope, and I think will be effective, I hope they implement that long clear, but Cam Atkinson's already gone, play it off the backboard, bounce, breakaway style. I have a feeling you're going to see that at least once this season. You heard it here first.
I don't know yet, but we'll see what happens.
If they're on the same unit, it's going to be fun.
Well, I feel like we're gonna we're starting to shift to the injuries. So before we do, I want to talk about Martin Jones, because I feel like it needs to happen.
I agree.
without question the star of this game, and that's not to say that the Flyers played a bad game defensively or anything like that. Like, it wasn't the same needing to get bailed out all the time by your goalie kind of thing. It was, well, first of all, for 2 periods they actually handled things really well. I think Washington's shot total through 2 was 17 shots, and that included 2 power plays to that point, by the way. So
right.
2 power plays. They're not getting really much of anything. You have a 2-0 lead now. After all that, things are looking good, and you're finishing the job the right way. And pretty much from the time that they did score, which was a very fluky goal, by the way, because I think it was kind of a stick-on-stick whack at it, and then it rolled off or hit the body of Patrick Brown on the way in, so it fluttered over Jones's shoulder. It was
very strange.
It was a weird goal. Like, it didn't feel like it was even going to have gone in. That's how weird it was. And yet you get to the end of it, and that clearly woke up Washington a little bit. So as they're pushing forward, and they're making that push that you fully expected to come at some point in the third period, he made a save on Connor Sheary that was a cross crease, quick tip type of pass, almost point blank, but he slides across and makes a save, and you're still up by a goal. And then they get the power play, but the power play also comes directly off of a good scoring chance for Ovechkin right near the net.
Yep.
And John Carlson's there banging away at it too, and then so they get the power play. And I think to that point, so I guess Ovechkin did get a shot there as well. So I guess that was his second shot, because they pulled up the graphic with 10 minutes left in the third period that showed he only had 1 shot in the game to that point.
Right.
Which is massive.
Right, because who does that to Ovi?
But from there, whatever the shot total was in the third period for Washington, they got 6 on the power play that came with 6 minutes left in the game. And Ovechkin went from 1 to 6 in the game.
It really is crazy. Their power play has done the same exact thing for 15 years.
Can you blame him when the guy who they're trying to get it to has 10 goals in 10 games?
Absolutely not. But it's just hilarious that it literally puck pass to 8 shot, pass to 8 shot, pass to 8 shot, just over and over and over and over again, and it's worked for 15 years.
But it's really funny how you had and this is credit to the Flyers penalty kill too, because they did what they had to do with this, which is you kind of keep a guy shadowing him as much as you can.
You have to,
and it's hard to, because you're trying to make sure you don't allow too much space in between by focusing too much on that left side.
Right, for Nicholas Backstrom or John Carlson or whoever else.
Backstrom was still out, so Backstrom didn't play. But you're sitting there going, Kuznetsov, Carlson, they didn't have Backstrom or Oshie, who would normally be on that power play, but you're filling in the gaps here, and they've got some young players who are pretty good. So
yeah, they've done a sneaky good job of drafting and developing.
To the point where 2 of their youngest were in the lineup and didn't look out of place. Believe it or not, I think Connor McMichael had an assist on the Brett Leeson goal.
Connor McMichael is going to be a good NHL player.
Yeah, he is. So is Hendrix Lapierre.
Yeah,
he's a really good player.
He's going to be a top line NHL player.
It's just really early for him, but he's going to be really good. And he got.
He has a lot of power. He
got passed on a lot because of injury trouble, and it's so far it's proving to be worth the gamble for Washington.
Hendrix Lapierre has a ton of talent.
But you get these guys, and so you're looking at the power play structure, and you just always have to be in that spot. You have to keep in mind where he is. You know what they're trying to do.
Right.
And it doesn't really matter what else is going on. You just have to try to keep that covered as much as possible. And the chance came up. It happened.
Yeah.
Tom Wilson standing in that slot position, gets a pass across through the legs of a defender, and Ovechkin's there, and he lets it go. And as fast as it was off of his stick, that's how fast the pad of Martin Jones comes out and takes care of it. And they get and the big thing to me, they get a clear right after it.
Massive.
Big save. There, I think it was Provorov who's there. Backhand out of the zone, get a line change and move on to the next opportunity.
You mentioned a name there, and I just wanted to shout out that Ivan Provorov has been very good this season.
He has been. And can I mention the shame it was again back in the Pittsburgh game that the first goal he's on the ice for at 5-on-5 is a fluky goal because if Jake Ensel just takes the shot that he wants to, maybe Carter Hart makes a save, maybe not. I don't know what happens. But he whiffed on it, and Hart had to kind of adjust on the fly, so he got frozen by it. And that allows the next shot to go through his legs, and that's what Provorov was on the ice for.
Whoever tweeted out that stat, could you not, please?
I don't even think it was a tweeted out thing because I think it was mentioned multiple times on the broadcast too.
So was it really?
Yeah, they were kind of asking for it.
All right, I think
it was said, and then a period later it was over.
Right. All right, I think we have danced around it enough.
But I do
Speaking of Ivan Provorov, we have his potential partner to talk about.
I did want to go back to Jones for 1 second though, because to put a bow on this game because of the fact that for all of the stuff that was said in the offseason, I'm not trying to sit there and say that 3 games is not a really small sample size, but it is 30% of your starts.
Right.
That actually does sound like a legitimate number for a backup goalie,
sure.
Does it not?
Yeah.
Like over the course of a season, you'll get 30% of the games.
Right.
If this is what you're going to get, you're fine.
Yep.
It's quite honestly been, for everything that we can talk about, truthfully, I don't want to say the effort, but the performance against Arizona didn't line up with maybe what it was in people's heads because it was Arizona, winless Arizona.
Right.
Like, how come it wasn't 6-1 probably is what a lot of people wanted to believe. When Pittsburgh comes out and they don't have Crosby or Malkin or all those guys, how come they didn't win this game, whatever. Your one consistency through 10 games, maybe outside of the first game that you played,
right,
has been goaltending.
Yep,
You've got
absolutely
really good goaltending every single game.
Every single game, and that's worth noting because that's the kind of thing that last year's Flyers didn't have.
And that's what makes playoff teams.
Yep.
I mean, to the point where I mean, if you want to be technical about it, because there hasn't, so a goalie hasn't been in goal for any game yet this year, where except for the very first one, where 4 goals were actually allowed by the goalie.
On a goalie, right?
Like, I think they've given up 4 3 times this year, and
twice it was into empty nets.
Twice involved empty netters.
Right.
And you're going, like, if you're going to tell me that at worst your goals against is 3, but at best it's 1, roughly, I mean, you're pretty much there. I mean, there's the one shutout that Hart had, and for a little while I thought Jones was going to get his. And I thought it would have been great because could you imagine the way that people would have to react if Martin Jones shuts out the Washington Capitals?
Oh, it would have been good on Saturday night, prime time in hockey. Oh, chef's kiss.
But it does make a statement, does it not? That he's been real. I mean, the last 2 games in particular, because you can look at the Boston game and go, that was a little bit of a back and forth deal. He did give up 3 in that game, but the last 2. Pretty darn good, right?
Yep. Well, I'm going to put a little tease in the Martin Jones conversation. We're going to put a pin in this. We're going to come back to it when we start talking about the future. I'm curious, top of your head right now, which game does Carter Hart or does Martin Jones start this weekend? Does he play Carolina or does he play Dallas?
Dallas.
Okay, we'll come back to it. We'll talk about the week ahead as we go. But we do have a couple injuries to get into, and we've kind of danced around them the whole show. Let's start with Ivan Provorov's partner. Let's start with Ryan Ellis.
I think this is the bigger place to start because we've touched on Kevin Hayes enough a little bit, and I think that everybody kind of knows his situation a little bit in terms of coming back. But this is becoming more and more concerning at this point. And it's not the fact that he's missed certain games. Like it's never a bad thing in my opinion to know something a few days out. So when he's not able to go after the 3rd game, so they play the 3 games at the start, Vancouver, Seattle, Boston. Okay. The Florida game comes up, and I kind of am sitting there thinking, well, you had 2 days between games. You're going to play this game. You have 3 days off game-wise to follow before the road trip. You're just sitting here literally saying it's the 4th game of the season. Yeah, if it's the playoffs, he probably would have played, but it's not the playoffs, so guess what?
So who cares, right?
We're not going to do this. Okay, no big deal. Then he goes on the road trip. They say he's not going to be ready for the Wednesday game, and you kind of brush that off too because you're going, you know what? You got a back-to-back. You got 3 really tough games. If he's able to come back at any point during the trip, you're getting reinforcements at a good time.
Right.
It's going to be a fresh player. He should be ready to go. Okay, that's great. But the point of him being on the road trip was that there was an expectation he was going to play at some point.
And here we are, 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later, and he still hasn't played.
And he doesn't.
Yeah.
And that's okay because I had people who were sending me tweets and things like that who would sit like at the end of the trip were going, just don't even play him against Calgary. Just get him ready for next week. Like,
okay.
What's one more game at this point? Let him rest up. And I even had people who were saying it about the Arizona game, going, "You're playing the worst team in the league in Arizona. They're winless. They haven't gotten." And we
talked about it on the show last week. Yeah.
Right. So what's the harm if he's not ready to go for that either? Like, your real goal here was to circle the 2 divisional games and say that's what you want.
We'd love to see him back for those.
Right. That's when you want him back. But if not Tuesday, like Tuesday would be great. But if not, you know what? It's already been 4 games to this point. What's the harm in one more? If the message is it's just one more game as a precaution, he's close.
It's early season.
We think Thursday. Right. Exactly. And it's early season, so you're being careful.
Right.
But now what happened was that it turned into if he's able to practice on Wednesday, then he'll come with the team on the trip. But if not, he's out for the weekend. Right. And that's exactly what happened. He didn't practice. He's out for the weekend. So right away, you already know that Pittsburgh and Washington, you're going to play those 2 teams, which is certainly a really good way to test where you are early when it comes to divisional play, even with Pittsburgh having guys out, even with Washington having guys out.
It certainly is.
Because let's put it this way. You're not coming in injury-free either.
Right.
Like, I think that you're going to get a very different game against Pittsburgh if Ryan Ellis plays, because Ryan Ellis has been one of your best players, and I know, again, small sample size, 3 games, but he's been one of your best defensemen in terms of breakout passes, getting out of the zone cleanly, and it was something you had a lot of trouble with against Pittsburgh.
Yep.
So if you could just get a guy like that in there, and that's why I was feeling like, same thing. If we were talking about with Kevin Hayes, Brassard maybe as the second-line center is kind of reaching the end of the line where it's passable until you need the guy back.
Nick Seeler in your lineup is doing the same exact thing.
It's not even Nick Seeler in your lineup. It's the balance that you lose when you have Seeler playing third pair, which means that he's with Yandel, and then Justin Braun. Justin Braun's been really good at the top. I'm not trying to.
He's been fine. Yeah, I agree.
But I think that only lasts for so long before you start to say something needs. And I don't even think
he doesn't have it. Right.
It's not even that. Like, I don't even feel like it's that. Like, I'm not sitting here going Justin Braun's been bad.
No, he hasn't.
And I'm not trying to make it seem like it was reaching the end of the line with him up there. As a matter of fact, there's enough people who actually have seen enough that they actually sit there and go, is it possible that when he comes back, when Ellis comes back, that Braun would actually stay up on the second pair
and do Ristolainen or Sanheim Ellis or Ristolainen Ellis?
No. Ellis goes back with Provorov.
Braun stays on the second pair
and doesn't go back. Now, see, I think that Braun on the third pair creates a balance. I think it's what makes Keith Yandel work.
I agree.
That's why I think it works out, because Braun's been so good this year in every role he's had that when you limit his minutes to begin with and you put him on the third pairing with a Keith Yandel type, you basically let Keith Yandel be the play driver and you tell Justin Braun stay back, and you're not supposed to be playing the best players on the other team.
I'm not going to lie. If those are your first and third pairs, Provorov, Ellis, and Yandel Braun, I'm pretty worried about that middle pair.
I got to give them credit for the game on Saturday because it was probably their best so far.
Yeah, you know what I mean, though, because Travis Sanheim has not been particularly good this season.
But that's what I think is unfair. I'm not trying to defend Rasmus Ristolainen completely here. I'm not saying he hasn't had some moments. I think that Sanheim's been worse on that pairing than Ristolainen has.
That's why the first name I mentioned was Sanheim, because Ristolainen, I think, has been okay.
Right.
Travis Sanheim has not been good this season.
But that's the difference, is you can't have one guy be just okay and have another guy be dumpster fire bad.
Right.
Like, one way or the other. It's the same thing. It was the same thing as when Sanheim was playing with Phil Myers last year. One of them might be good, but the other one is having a dumpster fire kind of night. So you're going, well, the okay game by blank isn't good when the other one is disastrous. Like, it's going to lead to similar results. So you need one of them to really step up constantly and be very good, and the other one to be like, you need one of them to be okay and one to be very good. And I think that last night you finally got that. Like, you got one of them who had a stronger game than usual or stronger than the previous ones, and then the other one falls into place, you know? But I actually thought collectively as a pair, they both were good, you know? They both were good. And that's also a difference maker. When they both can even just be passable as good, then you have something like...
then you have a very good defensive core.
Right. Like, this was actually their better... Like, that was the best showing that they've had combined. And I
agree.
Look, maybe that turns into a consistent thing. If you can turn it into a consistent thing, you've got something. But I don't think you're going to go the... I don't think it's so
consistent.
Easy. Right.
Consistent is such a good word. Because what did you say about Ryan Ellis after his first 3 games? You talked all about how steady he is.
Right.
I think there's a chance you see some consistency, some steadiness, some real talent out of this defensive core this season.
Oh, I agree. I think there's potential for it. You just need it to be across the board as much as possible. And I don't think that even
I think Ryan Ellis coming back is going to be big for that.
It is, because even when nothing changes about their pairing, right? Like, Ristolainen and Sanheim are still a pairing right now, like they would have been at the very beginning, like they were for the one game that Ellis played in that they were both playing into, right? So nothing changes there, but I do think there's a stylistic change when Ellis isn't out there, because I really think that it's follow the leader when it comes to how do you get out of your zone effectively.
Yes.
And so I think Ristolainen plays that way when Ellis is in front of him. Braun plays that way when it happens, and you get much more. You get cleaner exits. You get better passes up the ice. You get more of a transition game.
You keep using such good words. You said follow the leader. Exactly. Ryan Ellis is going to be the leader of this defensive core. Just having him back in the room, having him back in all the meetings, back in all this, like back on the ice with them every day in practice.
I kept saying over the offseason he was my favorite pickup, and that's why. Because
he's going to be the captain of the defensive unit. 100%.
Because I just knew coming in, for every change they made, and don't get me wrong, I said it multiple times over the summer when we were doing shows over the summer and talking about the moves they were making and everything like that. Cam Atkinson was going to be embraced from day one.
Oh, yeah.
No question about it. But
he shoots the puck just so much.
Right. But to me, Ryan Ellis was going to be the guy because, right now, this is the knock you have on him. The best availability you have, or best ability you have, is availability. And right now, we're not seeing a whole lot of it. But that's the knock you have, because the 3 games he's played have been great. Yep.
But I'm also willing to give them the benefit of the doubt that the Flyers are protecting their right. It's early in the season. You just traded for him. He's still got 4 years left on his contract?
Ellis is it?
It's 4, 5, 6, something. He's got a long time left, right? You're not. If Ryan Ellis was a rental, you might be playing him right now. If he was, 1 year left, he was Rasmus Ristolainen, something like that. But you're looking at protecting the long-term investment. He's got 5 years left, and he's not, on the wrong side of 30. You got to take care of him.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's you do. Here's the thing too. This isn't last season where everything's going to happen in 4 months and it's sprint to the finish line kind of thing.
Right, we're back to normal-ish.
You've got certain points, but you've got certain points where you've got to get to, where you've got to protect your players and not treat every game like a playoff game. Last year, I think, you go to last season, that was also one of the big problems too, was not only did you not have time to get away from it, where you're like, hey, this game happens, it wasn't very good, and you've got to come right back, and it might not be very good again because you just might not be that good of a team, kind of thing.
Right.
But there was no escaping in between. Like, to hear something like, here's a great example of it to kind of tie it into something from this week. To hear something like the Coyotes are in town on Tuesday, so Monday night when they're already in town, and Shane Gostisbehere's back, and a bunch of them go to dinner. Hey, one of our former teammates is back. We're all going to dinner. Now, whether you like, I get that they're including he's on the opposition the next night. I get it, but at the same
Man,
time,
it doesn't bother me.
But you've got no, it doesn't bother me either. But you've got similar players. Like you've got teammates going out, having a good time, trying to enjoy themselves.
Back to normal-ish.
Away from the rink, away from thoughts of just the game itself. What do you think that they're talking about at a dinner the night before? It's not, hey, how's your season going? What's good? Like, but it's probably things like, how's Arizona?
How's your girlfriend? Or your fiance, wife? I don't know where they're at.
You got married and all.
They did get married. Okay, so how's your wife? How's the dogs? How
have things been since the wedding? Apparently, here's even one. Apparently, Ivan Provorov and his girlfriend have taken over like some of the duties that Gostisbehere used to have with the SPCA and stuff like that.
Yeah, so, we've all met Drake.
Well, virtually, yes. But
right.
We've all seen. What was funnier is that that was questions asked of him at practice the next day after the game. So this was Wednesday, I guess, right? Provorov gets the biggest smile on his face when talking about Drake. It's so funny.
My mother just sent me a video from some Instagram dog page, and it was a video about Drake.
Yes, there is.
And my mother sent it to me. She's like, "It's too freaking cute."
I hear about Drake all the time. It's really funny, but regardless, my point is you go out and you don't talk about or have to focus on the game that was yesterday or the day before, or however long it's been since your last game.
You get to just have fun,
and you're not focusing on tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you're not focusing on tomorrow either. You're focusing on a night out, having a good time.
You're going out for dinner with your coworkers. That's all it is.
Kind of, but it's nice. Yep. So I do think that there's an element to that being part of it, that you're not stuck in all of that per se.
I said it before. I'll say it again. The Flyers are a vibes team. We saw it 2 years ago. We saw the lack of it last year, and it's back.
But I think a big part of it will be when Ellis comes back, because Ellis is giving you. He's not flashy. He's not going to be a gigantic personality. But he's just got that on ice ability. Like it's the
he's
steady
gonna do
Eddie
the Matt
thing.
Niskanen thing, right?
Yeah, it's the steady Eddie thing, right?
Absolutely.
That's just who he is. And but this is what I like. Over the offseason, it was why I loved that move so much, because I just remember, like, I knew the guy in Nashville. I knew the guy, and I'm like, I know what kind of game you're gonna get, and it's exactly the type of game you need.
Yep, absolutely. And we've talked about it, small sample size, only 3 games. So far, we've seen it.
Right. I mean, like you've seen what happens, because now you've got bigger sample sizes for the other 2 newcomers to the blue line. You've seen the sample size. I mean, I think that Ristolainen has progressively gotten a little better with more time.
I agree.
I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. I don't think he'll never be perfect.
No.
Like you've got to stop expecting that. He'll never be perfect. He'll probably once a game do something that gives up an odd man rush or something,
or take a bad penalty or something.
Right. He'll do something at one point every single game. But I think it's just as important for Travis Sanheim to progressively get better as well, to build off of that, as opposed to just putting the focus on Ristolainen. I like, as a pairing, they need to collectively do those things. Like, they need to be able to both find some consistency to the game, as opposed to let's just focus in on one or the other. Like, I think you just need to hope that both of them give you what is passable for a second pairing, and use that to your advantage when they do. And then I think we've seen, for his age, for his usage, enough of a sample size of what Keith Yandle gives you also. That, and I haven't, I mean, it's tough to, I'm sitting here trying to talk about it from Saturdays specifically. I don't know, if we've seen enough of this new look power play with Provorov back at the top and not Yandle. Like, I liked Yandle in the top power play unit.
Yeah, I didn't hate it.
I think he's actually better there than Provorov is, but I'm not the coach.
Right, I don't disagree. I've expressed some frustration in the group chat about Giroux on the right point in the power play, but again, I'm also not the coach.
The interesting thing about him on that right point, though, or right side, or however you want to look at it, is he's actually stepping into shots a little bit more on that power play right now, which is different. I know. I know everybody loves the one-timer from the left circle. I get it.
I just see him as uncomfortable there. Like, he doesn't know what to do, and it looks like when he receives the pass, he's not really in position to do anything with it, and, like, has to turn his whole body to shoot, or just, like, toss the pass back to the other point man. I'm not seeing a whole lot of dynamic action out of him, and Claude Giroux is such a dynamic player. That's what I'm looking to see.
I guess, but you know what the move is there, right? It's the same thing I've seen on the left side with somebody like Ivan Provorov. You got to do that. Come in from the circle, so you're coming toward the blue line from the circle. You've got to take the pass, make the reverse really quick, and then try to unleash it by making that move. I mean, it was really funny, by the way, because when Arizona was in town, Gostisbehere tried that blue line deke on Nate Thompson, and Nate Thompson had none of it. Just shoved him into the boards. And it was it.
I know what you're doing. We were teammates.
Right, but I laughed because I'm like, yeah, seen that move before.
Seen him get pushed into the boards on it before too.
Yeah, but not as much. He did pull it off later in the game, so I'm not going to sit there and say anything. Let's go to the other guy.
We do have to do that. Yeah. So Kevin Hayes, I think, man. We talked about Derek Brassard kind of reaching the end of his rope. When can we expect Kevin Hayes back in the lineup?
Probably not Wednesday like everybody was hoping for, but okay, so let me tie these two injuries together because I think the goal, now that it's become what it is, like with Ellis, now that he's missed as many games as he has, basically now you were starting to look at the timeline and kind of now going, well then, okay, both are eligible, like Hayes is eligible to come back as of Wednesday. So now you're kind of playing this, so who's back first kind of game, right?
Right, and that's not a game we thought we were going to be playing a week and a half ago with Ryan Ellis.
But your question now becomes, what about both of them? Are they both going to be ready for Wednesday? And
probably not.
Well, and here's the thing. I'm not surprised that, well, okay, Hayes is probably not going to be ready for Wednesday. That's fine. He's still soon enough removed from...
He's still conditioning.
The off-season surgery. You want to get it. I think the key to me was that they said something about getting him 4 to 7 full practices.
Okay.
Now what do you have over the course of that time specifically? He went on the road with you. Now they're practicing today, so he's going to practice today. He'll probably practice on Monday. He'll probably skate on Tuesday. Like, you're gonna get a couple of days right there. That's still only 3.
Right.
So skip
probably
Wednesday.
Not going to play Wednesday.
Right, so skip Wednesday, do the exact same thing as last time, as this weekend, which is he'll go on the trip. I don't know if he'll play, but he'll go on the trip. I think you should circle the November 16th game against Calgary.
Okay, so another week or so for Kevin Hayes.
That's what I think.
Okay.
It would not surprise me in the least if they turn around and they go, hey, Carolina's on the schedule, we're going on the road, and he's back.
Right,
And then it would not surprise me in the least, but
at this point, I think it would be folly to try to guess with Ryan Ellis.
Here's the thing about Hayes. I'm not going to put anything past anybody being available for Wednesday because of the fact that we're talking about specific practices. I think Hayes is kind of in a day-to-day situation with the practices. In, he's been around the entire training camp, preseason, etc., getting ready and eventually getting back onto the ice. He wants to be on the ice. I think Alain Vigneault is going to do everything in his power to get him back as soon as possible. Right. But I also think there is an element to, and this may go back to what he had to go through during the offseason. There's an element to letting him start at home, letting him be in the starting lineup.
Get that cheer.
Get a cheer for having your name called. So if not Wednesday, maybe next Tuesday, just to get that.
Just to get the home pop.
Well, especially because we've talked about this, and not only that, but here's another kind of good line for next Tuesday, if you will, because if it is next Tuesday and they're home against Calgary, then they're also home on Thursday against Tampa, and then they're also home on Saturday against Boston. But do you think there's an opportunity there for in the first 3 games he plays to get that first goal, to point to the sky for his brother and say, here it is, I finally got one, I'm back?
It makes sense to let him sit the week so he's got 3 bites at that apple.
And not just that, but to make sure that he's really conditioned as well as
of course,
so that you're not dealing with another injury right away. As for Ellis, anybody's guess is as good as mine. Here's the unfortunate part, because this is where it really becomes concerning to me. he didn't play during the course of the week. Like, he didn't play the Florida game that started all this. He went on the Western Canada trip but didn't play. They held him out against Arizona. That's all well and good. But when you held him out for the weekend, now it's getting a little concerning. But you go, okay, so when everything's over with the weekend, you're setting your sights on Toronto. That's another week. That's another week from when we last got an update.
Right.
Because we knew Wednesday of the previous week he's out for the week. So you go, now all of a sudden there's and we weren't getting, like, they're not streaming the availabilities for AV pregame on the road.
Right.
But the beats that were there are putting out there that he goes, well, same thing with Ellis. It's kind of an outside chance, and we don't even know if he's going to practice with the main team on Sunday.
Okay. I feel like the situation is rapidly becoming like Banks from Mighty Ducks 2. One day he's just going to wake up and the pain will be gone. He can rotate the stick again.
Kind of, like, that's where I'm at. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, we just have to wait until he decides, or until it decides it's done bothering him, I guess.
The thing to me, that's kind of crazy, is just like, this is now dragging on to a point where it's really getting concerning. Like,
I agree.
It's one thing, like, and even when people, because there were people who were even sending, like, I saw tweets out there going, like, what made him go from day to day to, like, saying week to week. And in my head, really, what all it is week to week. It's become week to week because of the fact that it turned into weeks. Right. It turned into this is from 1 week to 2 weeks kind of thing. But at what point in time do you stop and go, well, listen, it's been 3 weeks now. If he's not able to play against Toronto, you're now setting your sights on almost 4 weeks out.
Right. You start thinking about retroactively LTIRing him.
I don't even know if there's a reason to do that at this point, because you've gone so far with it at this point.
You free up a little cap space. Well, if you retroactively do it, you can get some cap space free.
Well, so then, speaking of, since we kind of touched on the injuries and stuff like that, since we're already talking about the next one, so let's get into this.
Yeah, so we got Toronto at home on Wednesday. That's something we've talked about. And then Friday, Saturday, Carolina, Dallas, both on the road. That's a nice little back-to-back. Dallas is off to a bit of a tough start, a little lack of production from the top there, but Carolina's a very good team. Toronto's picking it up.
Yeah, you're going to have a lot of... I mean, it's the beginning of a lot of tests. We know this. We've already talked about this a lot with this month, but... And Toronto's just getting going a little bit, it feels like. Like, you're starting to see Austin Matthews get into a rhythm. You're starting to see them building, several wins in a row. They're starting to pick it up.
They're starting to shift into gear.
They're getting really quality goaltending.
Yes. Yes, they are.
So you've got a lot of things working in their favor right now. And then obviously, I mean, what more can you say about Carolina?
They've been stellar. You talk about excellent goaltending. Freddie Anderson has been phenomenal.
So this is a good. I mean, we've talked about this a lot with some of the other games, and one of them being on the road, and this week no less too. Just like with the others, and I'm not trying to wipe out the Dallas game by any stretch, but we've talked about these measuring sticks and where playing. And Boston hasn't gotten off to the best start, so take it for what it is. But playing Boston early in the year, where are you at 3 games in? How about with Florida? How about with Edmonton? How about playing a back-to-back in Vancouver? How about Calgary? Like, you're seeing where you kind of stand. And I don't think it was any different with the game against Washington on Saturday. It's another, it was another one. Like,
and here's the thing. We've seen some tests already. We're 10 games in. The Flyers are 6-2-2. And they're still the only team to defeat the Edmonton Oilers, by the way. 9-1. That's the one. I mean, so far, and I've talked about this before on the show, they have found a way to win games. They have the record to show it after 10 games. They have beaten very good teams. It's a tough 2 weeks ahead, because even looking forward to next week a little bit, Calgary, Tampa, Boston. It's not getting easier.
Right.
We're in the dog days of the NHL season. We know the East is good. We talked about the Central being pretty weak, but the Atlantic is a strong division. The Metro is a strong division. These are teams you're playing a lot.
Well, and here's the thing. Like, as I look at it, because I'm looking at the calendar right now on the NHL app, which in the Flyers case, the home games are colored in black and the road games are in white, so it's kind of the perfect checkerboard pattern. Look at the checkerboard pattern that goes down with a Wednesday home game, a Thursday home game, a Friday home game in multiple weeks. But
That
you're
is
gonna
cool.
get to that Friday home game maybe 2 weeks from now, roughly.
That's that Black Friday game.
Like 2 to 3 weeks from now.
Yep.
And I think you're gonna have a really good idea of what this team may be. The more that they replicate Saturday's game, the more they replicate what they've done against Edmonton or whatever. Like, if you can get some key wins here, and I like the home games that they have coming up, because they're tough home games, but you're at home.
Yep. We do have to play Tampa in Tampa also, and Tampa and Florida back-to-back nights. Whew.
But you tell me how you're not supposed to learn something from those games. If they do something successful, how you don't learn something about that team.
If the Flyers come out of this month on the same pace that they kind of started this month, they are going to put the league on notice, because that they have probably the toughest month of the season in terms of opponent quality.
Think about what else is consistent so far. You know, the first full week that you played, take away the Friday game in the opener, the first full week that you played, you get 4 out of 6 points.
Yep.
Then the next week, you get 4 out of 6 points. Then this past week, 5 out of 6 points. There's another 6 points between now and our next show that are out there for them to possibly take.
Yep.
You come away with maybe another 4 out of 6. You're doing something right still, especially when you're playing Toronto, especially when you're playing Carolina, even with the game against Dallas, and then you're gonna get the exact same thing the following week. 3 home games, tough games. 4 out of 6. Keep trying to hit that mark as much as possible.
We talked about 10-game segments. Flyers are sitting at 6-2-2 right now. I'm going to rattle off these 10 games. I want you to give me a prediction for their record in these next 10 games. Just off the top of your head, don't. All right.
I hate this stuff, though.
Home, Toronto. Road, Carolina, Dallas. Home, Calgary, Tampa, Boston. Road, Tampa, Florida. Home, Carolina. Road, New Jersey.
And you want me to give you a prediction?
A rough record. Give me, do they go 6-2-2 again? Do they just stay on the exact same pace? I think that's supremely reasonable.
I will tell you what. Because
And if we're sitting here and this team is 12-4-4 in a month, that's a very good team.
You know what? 6-2-2 to start. If you would have told me that's what their record would be through 10 games, I would have told you that's probably right about where I would hope it would be. Because I had exactly what they had in October is what I thought was a good marker. Like, they finished the October slate. My thought was get 4 wins. If you can get 4 wins, you're in good shape. So they've started off November the right way here. I kind of like. So all right. So I will say this. I think they're going to get out of that selection. I think there's a way they can probably get maybe 5 wins out of that grouping.
Okay.
I'd love it if they could get 6.
Okay. I think that's fair. I think we have seen enough out of this team that we could realistically get 6. I think it would take a lot.
It will, but here's the thing. I think that it's going to be tougher, but I think they can beat Dallas. I think they can beat New Jersey. I look at the rest, and I'm going, it's not that I think you can or can't beat those teams. It's you're going to need to earn. They're much tougher
games.
They're much tougher. You're going to need to earn it. I do look at the abundance of. I mentioned 2 road games there among the 2 that I go. You're playing somebody who I think you could beat. So I look at the abundance of home games and I go, just find a way in 3 of them.
Right. And it is split 5-5, which is kind of nice. It's a good little cross section here.
Because I do think as I look at what teams you're talking about, like as I look, Toronto, Calgary, Tampa, Boston, Florida's on there, Carolina's on there twice, obviously. Tampa's on there.
You're playing Carolina and Tampa twice during this next 10 games. That's not nothing.
But there's always the possibility that you just catch a team on an off night. And
That's true.
And if you do, try to take advantage. That's
you win,
all,
GG.
Right. Like, just see if there's a chance that you catch a team on an off night somewhere in there. See if, I'm not going to try to dive into it now because I haven't looked, but I'm sure that if I looked at the other team schedules, someone's going to play in a gap that you don't have. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Where you have a gap that they don't have.
Absolutely.
That's what you got to take for what it's worth. Like,
yep, and we'll see what the Flyers can do kind of over the next 10 games. But, all right, we got one more thing to talk about before we're going to get out of here. And we're going to touch on some NHL news.
On it. Yeah, it's going to be a real quick touch on it, but we're going to do it because it's been...
Man.
How many months in the making was this?
I mean, when was the McDavid draft? 2017. Jack Eichel.
You had a trade for Eichel back then?
No, but I knew Jack Eichel was going to be traded then. Because who wants to spend time in Buffalo?
Did you really, or did you think,
No.
or was your thought he's not going to be a career Buffalo Sabre?
I thought that the Sabres went too hard on the tank, and they wouldn't be able to reap the benefits of the player, and that he would end up leaving.
Well, he said as much in the Elliot Friedman interview
Right.
that was out, so yeah.
Because they tore it down so aggressively to try to get Connor McDavid.
He basically flat out said he was pissed off about the fact that they were not going in the right direction like a couple of years ago.
Right. And then it just never got better because they just created such an awful losing environment, and it was bad. Jack Eichel is now a Vegas Golden Knight. Sliding Nolan Patrick down the depth chart one.
One to where? Because I saw a projected lineup. He's a fourth line center now.
Well, I mean, it's fair. But
I don't know why that's so funny to me.
it was Peyton Krebs, Alex Tuck, and some conditional picks, including a first and a second, for Jack Eichel and a third.
You texted the group and you had a thought.
Which one are you talking about?
No, like right after this trade, didn't you text? Maybe it wasn't you. Someone did text. Maybe it was Broads who texted me, who said it was like that they got fleeced.
Oh, yeah. Apparently, Calgary was in the running, and apparently there were some offers on the table. Blah blah blah.
That was more rumors than truth.
Right, and I don't know how much of that was just to kind of drum up interest, because apparently the biggest sticking point for Vegas was the inclusion of Peyton Krebs.
And Krebs is going to be good. Don't get me wrong; he's a good prospect, but
apparently Vegas really, really liked him and did not want to part with him. And when they finally agreed to include him in the deal, is kind of when the deal got done. But yeah, so the deal finally got done, and
I never
Vegas.
know.
Yeah, go ahead.
I never know what to think, like in this situation with this, because I get it's a big deal, and yes, long term, I think you're right. Like long term, it's going to make Vegas a lot. Like everybody who talks about how great Vegas could be from this, they're right. Long term, I sit there and I go immediately, like, he's going to have this surgery now. That's probably part of the sticking point from his standpoint was someo's going to let me have the surgery.
I was just about to mention that, is Vegas is going to let him have the surgery he wants.
So that's fine. I'm not trying to sit there and say that there's something wrong with that. It's
about a 3-month recovery timetable.
And that might be being generous.
3 to 4, yeah.
Kelly McCrimmon gave it even upwards of 5, which everybody jumped and went, what's 5 months from now? It's almost April.
Well, right, and I think Kelly McCrimmon is leaving that door strategically open.
Sure he is.
But I think it's most experts agree that it's in the 4-month range, and I think Jack Eichel would like to try to play in the Olympics.
I agree. Now, here's the thing. From Vegas' standpoint specifically, you're in a bit of a tight situation right now because he's going to have this surgery. So, yes, you just made this really big deal. There's certainly a chance that – because Tuck's hurt too. So, Tuck wasn't helping you in the moment, but could have helped you maybe sooner than Eichel. I don't know. It could have been just as long. There's certainly a chance Krebs could have helped you during the course of this time.
I think Vegas is also just kind of expecting to make the playoffs because their division is also not great.
Yes, but – you're sitting here, Eichel's going to get the surgery, so he's going to be out for a while. I don't really think there's much of a timetable on Pacioretty or Stone, so you're playing without them. You've also got, and it's not to say that he's been bad. I'm not trying to say he's been bad, but Robin Lehner was kind of a story because he has no safety net anymore. You traded Marc-Andre Fleury. You took away the safety net that you had with a good goaltending tandem. So now what? You know what I mean? Like, you kind of come back to, now what, like, in the moment? Like, you're kind of a thin team right now.
Yep.
With all those guys injured. How far behind could you fall? Like,
also worth noting, Vegas has drafted 5 players in the first round in their history, and they have now traded 4 of them. Don't buy a house in Vegas. Rent. If you go to the Golden Knights, rent.
Yeah.
All right.
Pretty much.
I think it's about time we get out of here. Eichel
It
going
is.
to Vegas is crazy.
Speaking of the Flyers' next opponent, some quick breaking news for you.
Yeah.
Peter Mrazek's hurt again, if it doesn't surprise you. So he's out for 4 weeks, so he's not available this week, obviously. I mean, the goalie who I was saying they were getting good goaltending from is Jack Campbell, obviously.
Right.
He's been really good. I assume he's starting.
I imagine so.
I mean, unless I go in and check and find out that somehow or other they have a game right before. No, you know what? They play Monday, but that's besides. But there's an example of what I was.
Campbell.
There's an example. There is an example of what I was talking about. So a team plays Monday. You last played Saturday. Come in fresh. Come in ready.
Come in ready. Yep.
You might have a shot to win a game.
All right.
The team played.
Speaking of coming in ready, we'll be back next week, ready to talk about more hockey.
That's right.
Make sure to follow the show on Twitter at YWT Podcast. Make sure to find Kevin at Kevin_Durso. You can find the show everywhere you find your podcasts: Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, etc., etc. Every podcatcher on earth. We are also on SportsTalkPhilly.com. Make sure to follow them on Twitter and SportsTalkPHL and at Flyerdelphia for your Flyers coverage. We got those graphics. And Kevin, anything else here? Or
Nope.
All right, beautiful.
More this week.
Love it.
More this week.
And we'll be back next week to talk about it. See ya.